now that I'm recording. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our first quarterly call. We do 4 of these a year. And so every quarter or so, we try to pull together all the members and supporters who want to learn updates about the issues we work on firsthand and have a chance to have a conversation about those. So I am Lois Mirgaard. I'm the National Field Organizer for Alaska Wilderness League. So I'm the go-to person where you would ask any questions, ask for any materials, have any ideas that you have for us, ideas that we should be doing, creative ideas for us to get the word out about the special wild places we're trying to protect. I would be the go-to person for that, and I can help you with resources and tools, especially if you want to take action in your own communities and work on these places in some way. So please keep that in mind and bump me if you ever have a question or would like further information. We do have an online advocacy toolkit as well. And in the notes, I will send out the link to that, and you can find a lot of materials, background information, and ideas there too. I would like to also have Ariel Baker introduce herself just quickly. She will be on the agenda a little later in the call, but if you want to say hello, Ariel, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel Baker. I'm the annual giving manager here at the League, one of the members of the development team. And yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we're excited to have you all joining us today.
Yep, thanks so much. I know probably most of our conversation today will be about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, one of the amazing wild places we work to protect because there is so much threatening and going on around that particular place. But I will also touch on the Tongass National Forest and updates there, and the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska and updates there, just quick updates on those two. I will also open up a question and answer period at the end of our call. So if you want to hold your questions or put them in the chat, we can try to get to those and have some time for that at the very end. I guess I'll just kick in. I mean, basically January 6th, very historic day in the United States for a few reasons, many reasons actually. One, the attack on our nation's capital, of course, will go down in infamy as they're saying, and pretty devastating what happened and what's continuing to evolve with that issue. But for our work, another historic thing that happened on January 6th was they actually sold leases to oil companies. The Trump administration sold leases to oil companies in our Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the thing that we've been working to try to stop and effectively raise awareness about for, well, since 2017, when the Tax Act passed in the Congress that mandated 2 lease sales within 10 years. Well, this was the first one. And actually, although there were acres sold, some of the most pristine and amazing places for caribou calving and along the riverways, that kind of thing, tracks that we really do not want to see developed absolutely at all. It was an epic failure as well. So it really was, for the lease sale, a joke, an epic failure. Only 3 different companies actually bid on the leases that were put up. There was just over 1 million acres in tracts put forward to be possibly bid on. And about 22 tracts altogether, about half of those actually had bidders. The biggest bidder was actually a state-owned entity itself. It's kind of questionable whether that is even all right. You know, they obviously would have a competitive advantage because it's also the state that receives the monies from leases. They split 50-50 with our federal government. So that's being looked at, whether this is even okay, but the entity itself, state-owned, is the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, ADA. So that's the biggest lease owner now. I believe they've received like 9 of the 11 tracts that sold. The other 2 companies are not known to us very well. One was Knik Arm LLC. It's owned by one person. They bid on just one track, and we are doing a lot of research to figure out who this is and their motivations and what's going on there. And the other bidder was it's called Regenerate Alaska, but it's actually an arm of 88 Energy. It's a oil and gas company that's based out of Australia. So we are looking at that company as well. Regenerate is also just bid on one small track. And so we will be trying to influence those two companies to back off their leases. I'm not sure what all we can do with the state leases, but there is a letter being developed right now, going into the CEOs of those two companies and telling them that they are in for a lot of trouble if they continue to try to accept and then develop their leases. So the campaign we're working on with a lot of coalition members will be putting a letter into these two people, the owners of these companies or CEOs of these companies, and telling them that they should be backing off before the inauguration, so within the next week or so. So that's happening. It might be possible that we would call on everyone to, do a call-in day of action or something coming forward if they don't back off. So stay tuned for that. And we do have information about the companies that we could get out to people. And it's very possible that we get thousands of phone calls into these two people. They would also be backing off too. So there is more to come on the corporate side of the work. But of course, the other thing we're looking forward to, definitely coming forward here, is we have Biden as our president-elect, who will be inaugurated a week from, well, not even a week from today. And we are certainly looking forward to a new administration who actually really supports protecting the Arctic Refuge. We are doing a lot of raising awareness and momentum and getting people in to support President Biden's commitment to take day one action on the Arctic Refuge. And of course, we're calling it day one, but remember, it might be day 2, day 3, even within the first week, but we are expecting him to take really strong action. The first thing we're hoping that he will do is cancel those leases. We do believe that the Trump administration is going to try to certify the leases and get them into the hands of the corporations before the 20th. So if that does not happen, he has a much easier track to go to cancel the leases. If they do get sold, then we have to take further steps to try to get them back from those companies. But certainly there's a lot the administration can do. And we'll touch on more of that through some of the other conversations, like when we're talking about the courts and all that. But there's also another historic thing that happened, was certified on January 6th, is the Senate seats in Georgia flipped to Democrats. So now the Democrats have the leadership in both the House, the Senate, and the administration coming up in a week. We think that's going to give us a lot of opportunity congressionally as well. So please stay tuned. That's actually one of the things I would like to make an ask of all of you on. If you could please, in the next few weeks, maybe before the end of January, say hello to your new or returning Senate and House members, and just flag with them that we congratulate you on returning, or we congratulate you really on winning your seats, but we certainly want you to know that your constituents care about wild places in Alaska, in particular, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So that would be something that everybody can take action on, and it would really be great to start that conversation with these new offices, especially. In Congress, we know that there are champions on the Arctic Refuge in both the House and Senate, and they are going to be introducing standalone bills, probably by the end of January. So very quickly here, we should be seeing the wilderness bills, possibly the repeal bill. We actually are at a step below zero when we lost the Tax Act and they mandated those lease sales. We have to get back to ground zero, and repeal the mandate for leases. So no new leases could possibly happen in the future. But from there, we go forward with permanent protection measures. So we will try to get caught up with protections as it always has been, and then move forward with some protection for permanently in place for that place. So certainly there's a lot that can be done in Congress. we are looking forward to working with the budget committees as well and doing something through funding that we can change the focus of the interior away from doing any kind of projects in the Arctic Refuge. So there is some work going on through budget work as well as these standalone bills. That I know for sure we'll be putting alerts out and asking for help on, and maybe getting district office meetings virtually set up with some of these members, so that there will be a lot going on that we can do in the congressional field, in congressional arena. So stay tuned for that, absolutely. The other place we are working, of course, is the courts. And unfortunately, we did work with a coalition to try and file an injunction so that the lease sales could not be sold. And Judge Gleason in the Alaska court denied that injunction, but opened the door for the fact that what we have to do is prove harm on the ground. So she is definitely interested in hearing us come back if there is something we consider a stop that we need to have happen through the courts for any kind of impact on the ground itself. Just handing a lease over to a company doesn't actually mean on the ground damage. So, but the next step is to stop the seismic exploration proposal that's been going through the Trump administration as well. So we will be returning to the courts. We have really savvy and experienced legal lawyers looking at this right now for us to see what all of the different actions we can do through the courts. And just a reminder, there are 4 lawsuits against the Trump administration that now will move to being against the Biden administration on the shoddy job they did with environmental review and all of this corners they cut trying to get through this lease sale within the first year, within the first term of President Trump. So there are a lot of lawsuits that the new Interior Secretary, as well as the BLM and different departments heads, will need to be looking at. And it's very possible that we will have some blocks to any leasing come through the new administration, through the courts. And just as a reminder, the Alaska Wilderness League is on a case that's along with the Gwich'in Steering Committee. There's also a lawsuit that was brought by the tribal communities themselves. There's a lawsuit that's a national environmental organization lawsuit. And then there's the attorney generals of 15 states that brought a lawsuit against the Trump administration for this damage to the refuge that could happen through the development of oil and gas there. So a lot of things will be coming forward through the courts as well. I guess what I had planned to do is just jump really quickly to the Tongass and the National Petroleum Reserve, and then we will be able to get back to questions afterwards. So please keep in mind what your questions are, because I'm not taking any at this point, but I do believe there'll probably be a lot of them. Quickly, just a quick update on the Tongass National Forest. Now, of course, you know that the Trump administration did roll back or exempt the Tongass from the roadless area conservation rule. There's a rule through the Forest Service that was done, and actually the anniversary of the roadless area conservation rule was just Tuesday, January 12th of this year. So we're celebrating the conservation rule through an anniversary. And by doing that, the House, our congressional House members introduced a legislation to reinstate the roadless area protection to the Tongass through the Roadless Area Conservation Act. And I know there's a lot there, but the law has been reintroduced this year, actually with more than 60 original co-sponsors. So it's very popular already, even amidst all the turmoil that's going on in DC with all of this other action and the new, another Trump, the word is gone, but I know they are trying to remove him from office as well. Sorry about that. And in between all this, we have champions that are trying to move forward, because it was the anniversary of that rule, to move forward legislation to fully protect the Tongass again. So we know that this is going to move forward very quickly this year as well. The Senate is going to soon introduce their version of that, the match, and it will have probably well over 17 co-sponsors on it. So we are definitely going to be moving to reinstate that protection in the Tongass National Forest. And for the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, which is the western half of the north coast of Alaska, the Western Arctic Reserve, we like to call it. That area was under the Trump administration. A new integrated activity plan was finalized and the record of decision put in place, unfortunately, and it opened up like over 80% of those acres, 23 million acres of public land. And it's put at risk a lot of special places, high biodiversity hotspot places in the National Petroleum Reserve, especially one we're really concerned about is Teshekpuk Lake. And so we are looking for the new Biden administration to do some very good protections that could be put in place there. We know he has a platform for no new federal leasing on our federal lands. So we know that will come into play to stop any new activity in the National Petroleum Reserve, as well as the new platform that's called 30 by 30. And that means protecting 30% of the lands and waters of the United States by 2030. So there's going to be a lot of activity around that new campaign as well. We know the Biden administration supports this work. And of course, we can't protect 30% of US lands without looking very closely at lands in Alaska, where the biggest sections of public lands are. That would affect the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, as well as the Tongass National Forest. So some of these places to be put aside in particular for how important they are as solutions to climate change. So we have a lot of avenues to go forward, and this next year will be really exciting to try to right the wrongs that happened under the Trump administration. I think I will pass us over to Ariel with those little updates, and then we'll hear from Ariel, and then we can get back and open up a conversation and some question and answer time.
Thanks, Lois. Can you all hear me? Great. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen because we have an exciting new opportunity and offer for you all that I wanted to share. So you may have, okay. So you may have seen these Arctic Refuge face masks that we have been advertising over email for probably around 6 months. And the offer was to become a monthly donor and get an Arctic Refuge face mask. So we had the caribou and then we had the polar bears, and we had a lot of people sign up and have received pictures of people wearing their face masks, which is really exciting for getting out the word about how important protecting the Arctic Refuge is. And we've gotten a lot of questions about if we're going to make a Tongass National Forest face mask. And so we have moved forward with that, and we actually have 2 different designs with the hashtag of Protect the Tongass, which is the coalition's hashtag. And because you all are some of our most important and most active supporters and members and activists, we wanted to turn it over to you to help us decide which design we will move forward with. So this is our first time doing this, but we've created a poll in Zoom, and Lois is going to activate the poll now, and you just have to say if you prefer design 1 or design 2. And so, yeah, it looks like people are already voting, so that's great. So yeah, we'll just leave this for, a few more seconds and just see what you guys think. Wow, really? 50-50.
Yeah, coming up.
Pretty even. Okay. We'll just give it a few more seconds if anyone else has.
Figure about 45 seconds, so we just got a few more to go. If anyone else is just thinking about it and still wanting to make a choice.
Yeah.
All right, we'll end the poll, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, okay, so design 2 was this group's choice. Thank you for participating. So we still have a few other groups and some colleagues to get their opinions on. So we will finalize the design soon, and we will be offering this to you all soon with the same offer of becoming a monthly donor at $15 or more a month. And then you can get a face mask. And we're still offering the polar bear and the caribou, but we'll have this Tongass option as well. So keep an eye on emails, and it will also appear on our website. So you'll definitely know when we're offering this. So if you're holding off because you wanted a Tongass face mask, now is a great time to get that. So yeah, keep an eye on email, and thank you for your participating. All right, let me stop sharing. Okay, great. Back over to you, Lois.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ariel. Yeah, so now we can open up and have a conversation. So if you would like to ask a question, you can unmute or raise your hand and I can call on you. I think I can see. I'm not sure if I can see everyone. You know, it might be best to just raise your hand or unmute yourself to ask a question. I do see a few in the chat, so I will kind of go back through the chat and take a look at some of that. And some of those early comments reminded me of something that I feel very bad about, but that I forgot to do as we kicked off into this meeting. So I would like to take a moment to do that now. We do like to now start our meetings with a land acknowledgement statement that we do for the indigenous folks that lived on the lands here before they were stolen. So I just want to catch up on this meeting by acknowledging what has been buried by honoring the truth. Alaska Wilderness League is committed to honoring the traditional relationships that have existed for millennia between the indigenous peoples of North America and the lands we now seek to protect. These lands have been stewarded through many centuries by the ancestors and descendants of the tribal nations. The land I'm on, my office, is now known as Minnesota, but it was the original homeland of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor and respect the indigenous peoples who were forcibly removed from these lands and who are still connected to this territory and whose practices and spiritualities were tied to the land and continue to develop in relationship to the land and its other inhabitants today. Centuries of genocide and forced assimilation have created a range of challenges for indigenous peoples. For more than 500 years, Native communities across the Americas have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of violent efforts to separate them from their land, culture, and each other. Acknowledgement is a small part of the more significant commitment to truth and reconciliation that we can start to be doing. So thank you for the moment to do that first. Apologize I didn't start the meeting with that. But yeah, let's get to some questions. Unless anybody wants to say something about the land acknowledgement process too. Okay, so it looks like some of the first questions that I have are about why is the Alaska Development Organization, why is that a bad thing that they're the most successful bidder? You know, it's a bad thing to have anybody bid on these acres. We don't want anyone to develop in our Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, absolutely not. But the fact that it's an entity of the state itself means it's not who we were planning on going after, like the enemy. You know, we thought it would be an oil company and that we could do a corporate campaign and get a lot of people pressuring them, especially if it was an industry that had some sort of PR saying that they're good guys and they would be caring about what their buyers were thinking. But now that it's an Alaska entity and it's a state-owned entity, that kind of puts a whole different dynamic into the process. It's they're still bad guys, and there is a campaign and research going on within the state of Alaska to see what kind of pressure points we might be able to put on these guys to back off from actually trying to develop these acres. But it's a different ball game than what we were planning originally. And so anybody bidding on these lands, and it doesn't matter if they're big corporations, little corporations, or state-owned agencies, it's a bad thing. We do not want to see any kind of action go forward on the ground where we actually see damage to these habitats. But yeah, I hope that just explained what that question was looking for. And yeah, the voters in Alaska pretty much are supportive of oil and gas development, a majority of the voters. It's getting closer and closer as we do polls in the state. We're starting to see a closer and closer split between protection, permanent protection, and development, but it's always been a resource-based economy there. So people do support the funding that they get through the reserves there. As far as the oil and gas industry set aside a permanent fund a long time ago when they first started developing and started putting money into it. And the proceeds, the interest off that fund is actually reimbursed to all of the citizens of the state. Everybody gets a check at the end of the year rather than having to pay taxes. They actually really rely on those funds for their budgets. You know, they rely on that fund. And it used to be around $2,000 that they would get back each year for every person that lived there. So children to adults to all citizens. It's now closer to somewhere between $900 to $1,000, but they still really do rely on that for their budgets. What do we think of Biden's nominee? I forgot to mention the Interior Department, Deb Haaland, is who Biden wants to appoint. She needs to be confirmed, of course, that has to go through Congress, but we believe that she will be, and she is a champion. She will be a wonderful Interior Secretary, and of course, put people in place in all of the positions we care about, the chiefs and leaders of the different agencies, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Forest Service. We should see a whole new breath of fresh air come through our public agencies through the fact that she would be a great leader for that. And I know someone here says she's great, but yes, she will be a good Interior Secretary. Somebody's questioning the designs. I guess that's just replies we'll have to look at as we decide which one to go with. Ambler Mining Road. You know, that I don't know a whole lot about. I know it is something that our Alaska Anchorage office is tracking and watching. And I do know that the same entity, the state-owned company that bid, or agency that bid on leases in the Arctic Refuge, put forward a lot of money to get that Ambler Road built. And that was a real controversy that actually I think just happened last week as well. So I think they put millions of dollars into a fund to get Ambler built. So we're seeing state coalitions fighting that. And I could probably try to look up more information to get a better idea of what the newest update is on Ambler, but you know, and there is, as far as the seismic permitting goes, we want to see it stopped. We're going to try to get an injunction so that it does not happen on the ground. We're actually going to try to work through the Biden administration as well to stop anything from happening on the ground there. But the fact that it's also required to have a certain amount of snow cover, certain amount of frozen permafrost, you know, depth before anything can happen there too, is also something we're trying to watch very closely. Someone mentioned the ice pack. Yeah, that is going to be a really important part of the puzzle as we go forward. Right now, it appears there isn't very much snow in the Arctic Refuge, so a company could not start doing seismic presently, but who knows what might happen February, March. But yeah, that is something we're watching very carefully. And we are worried about climate change, and that is making major changes in Alaska. The north coast of Alaska is feeling the effect. We used to say 3 times faster than the rest of the world. It's now, science is proving it's 4 times faster than the rest of the country. So we are there, that is affecting the local communities up there, and they are looking at many things. I mean, on a positive side, they're looking at ways to move into alternative clean energies, solar, wind, things that they can do in that direction, as well as they are having to deal with changes to their cultures and their patterns of hunting. And so that is something that we have to watch very carefully. We are pushing, well, presently Pebble Mine has been stopped by the EPA, and it has been stopped because of the 404 permitting. And they said, no, there's no way that that company could mitigate the damage to the wetlands and still move forward with that project. So they denied the permit. It looks like the governor, though, is trying to reopen that. We just saw that press come out within the last week as well. He is trying to repeal that denial. So we'll see more coming forward on Pebble Mine, but yeah, that is something we've been working on and trying to get stopped as well. Thought we were done, and hopefully with the Biden administration, we are done, but we'll have to see what the governor tries to do with that. Is there any other questions that people want to ask? I think I've caught up with the chat list.
Lois, this is Dave in Washington State.
Yeah, hi, Dave.
So I have both a short-term and a long-term question relative to the refuge. The short-term question is, you talked about what Biden can do on day one in terms of no new leases, but those existing leases, the three betters, can that be undone in any way? Can those be bought back and retired, or what's the strategy for those three?
Yeah, we are. We have put forward, in fact, our savvy legal mind folks have put forward a whole list of possible actions the Biden administration can do. And so the transition team is looking over those documents and deciding which direction the president-elect, hopefully soon to be president, will take. I mean, there's an executive order he could do. So he could move forward with an executive order to put a halt or pause on any kind of new progress going forward for those leases right away. There is the buyback process that we could spend taxpayer dollars to buy those leases back, but that is a possibility. Also through the courts, he could decide that the court cases that we put forward to challenge the environmental review is correct, and that was a shoddy job. So they very easily could say, yeah, you are right and we are wrong, and we have to cancel this process because we can't go forward with the environmental review that was done. So there are a lot of other smaller steps as well. So there's quite a bit that can happen. Now, if we're looking for day one action, hopefully something within the first day, 2-day, 3-day timeframe could be the executive order calling for a pause. All of these other things would be more time consuming, and because the leases have been sold and probably will be awarded to the companies before January 20th, it's a little more complicated, but definitely there's things Biden can do to right the wrongs. Yeah. And there's a lot of avenues, actually. When I saw the list of things that the legal teams put forward, I was like, wow, there's a lot of options. So
That's great. Thank you. That helps a lot.
yeah.
And then the longer term question is, does AWL have a developed position at this point on what the long-term goal is for the refuge? Would it be monument status under the Antiquities Act? Would it be, national park, wilderness, something that would require a congressional vote? What's your take on that?
Our goal is permanent protection. The monument would be a layer of additional protection over the fact that it's already a national wildlife refuge. But that would not be the permanent protection we need to see in place. I mean, there are monuments across the country that have allowed different types of development. So we are looking for permanent. Wilderness bills have always been the go-to idea in the past. Now we're kind of taking a look at what that would look like in a new lens, and that's through the justice and equity lens. So there is within the indigenous cultures across the country in the lower 48, a real distrust of wilderness because of the historical use of the wilderness bill, although it was fantastic that we have these places set aside that have not been touched by any kind of development. The other problem with the wilderness bill that happened is that it put a line around a map and then kicked people out of there. So we actually, in this country, removed a lot of people from their homelands because we said it was wilderness and it had to be untrammeled by man. In Alaska, we will be doing a wilderness type bill. It might look a little bit different than the lower 48, and it will be taking in justice, a justice lens. But yeah, permanent protection, wilderness bill. In fact, the standalone bills that I was talking about getting introduced before the end of January here are probably, in the Senate, will probably be a wilderness bill. In the House, it might be a twofold: repeal the lease, and because that has passed once already, it could move a lot quicker in the House side, and then also adding in the permanent protection measures. But yeah, it's being looked at, and definitely rather than monument, it would be looking for that wilderness. The highest protection we have in this country for our public lands presently is the Wilderness Act.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Thank you, Dave. Is there any other questions that people have? We've gone through this very quickly, I guess. I moved fast when I talked about what's going on. I sure appreciate everybody's interest in this issue, and certainly want to flag again, we will be looking for your help and support in protecting these places. There'll be a lot of work to do over the next 8 months or so to start moving all of these measures forward. So I sure hope that you are staying in touch with our alerts that go out, our newsletters that go out, and just flag me if you have any questions that pertain to any kind of actions you want to do in person in your community. One thing that would really be helpful, even between now and the inauguration, just to give the President Biden all the support that he needs to do his strongest actions, would be getting letters to the editor in your local community papers. And on our advocacy toolkit, we do have talking points, example letters, so you could go look at what's printed there and kind of take that and put it in your own words, or how it makes sense for your local press, but put letters trying to educate your community about these issues, because there's a lot of people that aren't watching it as closely as we do. And that would help to raise the momentum about this place that's so threatened. And also, the administration is watching the press, and they have teams of people that look to see what's getting covered across the country. And if they see a lot of momentum and voices and interest in the Arctic Refuge, they'll know they're doing the right thing.
Lois, this is Dave again in Washington.
Yep.
There's quite a few questions popping up in the chat, and folks feeling like they're not getting answered.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am not seeing them. Okay, I see Senator Murkowski seems to have been relatively strong independent voice. Yeah, she is we have to be very careful with Senator Murkowski, because there's going to be a lot of things that we will need her vote on. Unfortunately for our issues and for the Arctic Refuge, she is the one that spearheaded getting the mandatory leases into the Tax Act. She is a very strong supporter of developing the Arctic Refuge. So we do not have her on that particular landscape and issue and campaign, but she may be very helpful, like in the Tongass National Forest, for instance. So there's other places that we could possibly work with her on. I know she's against Pebble Mine, which is really good. But yeah, so we have to work with her office on some campaigns, but probably there's just no way to see eye to eye on others. How can Congress and the cabinet focus on reversing the Trump? Well, Congress is going to be having a really busy year reversing all of the things that the Trump administration has done. And there are many avenues that they can do. You know, passing legislation is one of them. They also have ways that they can change things through what kinds of budgets they put forward for the different departments. I know the Environmental Protection Agency is being looked at very carefully. So there's quite a bit that Congress can do. And more than I can even know. I only know the places that we are working on and the things that I've already kind of mentioned, but yeah, I'm not sure the governor's motivation. That's a good question. Have no idea. Perhaps his background comes out of industry in some way. or he knows maybe he's friends with the folks in Pebble. That is not something I have an answer for. And I know that we have 6 days to go. There's a lot of damage. I mean, I keep seeing in the press that there are folks in Congress and in many of the other arenas that are calling the Trump administration clear and present danger still. We don't know what could be next. We have never been able to really guess at what this administration could do. And it's been far worse than we even thought when he first was elected. So the 6 days could be trouble, and we have to watch. It looks like most of it is going to be the protesting and rioting kinds of things, but not sure. I don't have an answer for one of those questions there. David's, yeah. I think I caught them all, but if I did not, and your question has not been answered yet, could you please, David, would you like to make a statement? You are muted.
No, I was going to just reiterate the questions that I had in the chat because I didn't know if they were coming through, but you've answered them. Thank you.
Yep, I'm sorry I didn't see it being added there, but I hope I caught up with everything. Yeah, but thank you for the questions. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions that I may not have hit? And you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask those. Otherwise, I'll just close up here. And if there are no further questions, I will be sending out within the next few days. I don't know if it will be as close as tomorrow, but probably by next week, the notes, a couple quick notes from our call here and the recording. So everyone will have a chance to take a look at that and hear that again. We'll probably have a link to the face mask again and some information about that. But I just appreciate you guys joining us today and hope I was able to fill you in on all of the things that you may have had questions about or didn't know the latest updates on. And please do watch for our ongoing monthly newsletters and other ways of communication. Yeah, I'm it's hard to be optimistic with what's going on in the world right now, but I am for the new administration coming in. All right, well, thank you, everyone. If you want to show your video and say goodbye, that would be great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for joining. Good to see faces to names a little bit here. Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for all your support and help.
Thank you.
Thank you.